Now, let me just remind you before we go through this, you should have tried to fill this out yourself, because the way you learn these things is not by sitting there and listening to me, although I hope that helps, but by actually sitting down there and trying to figure out what's being said in what categories, and all these exercises to fit things in certain categories to help you understand the concept. So we start with philosophy and we talk about what the etymology is, and I think the correct answer for the etymology question is that, remember etymology, word origin, that the word philosophy comes from the Greek philo, love of, sophia, wisdom. Philosophy is the love of wisdom or the love of knowledge, but it's just not any old knowledge. That is, using the etymological definition, the definition from the etymology as a definition, we end up with a definition that's way too broad. And we said the way to hone in on what philosophy is by looking at the kind of questions that philosophers deal with. And we said we put all the questions into three buckets, as we saw in the overview, right? The correct answer there, and the order doesn't matter, is the three buckets, the three topics that all questions of philosophy fall into. The three areas are knowledge, reality, and value. And now in the next line, or that next section, we were supposed to put in the branch in which these particular areas, these particular topics are studied. And the branch of philosophy that studies knowledge is epistemology, or theory of knowledge. And the problems that we talked about, that we mentioned, were, first of all, the problem of knowledge and skepticism. Do we really know anything? Or sometimes, do we really know anything about the world outside of us, the outside of our mind? And the other problem that we mentioned that's studied within the theory of knowledge is the analysis of knowledge. How do you define knowledge? What components make up knowledge? What concepts are involved in the concept of knowledge? Now, turning to reality, the branch of philosophy that studies it is metaphysics. And within metaphysics, we have two disciplines, two sub-branches, cosmology and ontology. And ontology is really the one that we spend most of our time with nowadays. As I mentioned, cosmology is really largely studied today by scientists, by physicists, by astronomers. But back when there was no science, and remember, philosophers, science and philosophy got started together by the same guys, really. So back then, cosmology was clearly there. But let's look at the problems of ontology, because that really tells us where philosophy is and what philosophers are worried about. And that is, we talked about the mind-body problem, free will, determinism, and fatalism. And the more general question about what different kinds of things exist, or what different kinds of things are real. And we'll talk about more about this, because when we look at the problems after this, as you should be aware, we had kind of detailed slides on particular problems to make sure we understood what the problems were. Under value, correct answer for the branch, there were actually two branches, ethics and political philosophy, and the major question of ethics, and that's why I have that arrow there, 1A, is how should I live my life? What is the virtuous life? What ought I do? And within political philosophy, really the central question is, what is the just form of government? As what is the right government, the correct government? What does it have the rights to do? What do the citizens owe it? What does it owe the citizens? Now, in the area of value, there's another branch of philosophy that studies different kinds of value, values about beauty, aesthetics. And sort of a central question of aesthetics is there something objective about beauty, or is beauty relative to each person? And this gives us, if you think about it, we can turn this into, let's say, a two-minute set of talking points to explain exactly what the questions are in philosophy. So now, having studied this, you should be able to go and, tell your best friend, your mother, your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, and who doesn't know anything about it, and explain, hey, this is what I'm studying, and I know what philosophy is. Now let's turn to some details on each of the problems to make sure we're clear what the problems are, and we also want to understand sort of the spectrum of the wide variety of positions you can take in answering the question. Because keep in mind, the answers are going to be, you're going to take a position to answer the question, and then the issue is which position is the correct position.